For 6 years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle built a life 6,000 miles away from the palace walls that once defined them. They swapped Windsor for Montecito, royal duty for Netflix deals, the firm for freedom. But now, in the summer of 2026, something has shifted. Quietly, almost without warning, reports are swirling that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are packing up their California life and coming home, back to the country Harry once said he could no longer feel safe in. Back to the country that, in many ways, they ran from. So the question every royal watcher in Britain is suddenly asking is not if they're returning. It's where on earth are they going to live? Because one thing is already certain, they will not be moving back into a palace. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this homecoming is happening now, what property is being whispered about behind closed doors, and why the answer to where will they live might tell us more about the future of the entire royal family than anyone expects. To understand why this story matters so much, you have to understand what home has actually meant for Harry and Meghan, because for this couple, home has never been a simple word. It's been a battlefield, a wedding gift, a eviction, a courtroom argument, a symbol of everything that went right, and then everything that went wrong, between a prince and the institution he was born into. When most people think about royal homes, they picture something grand and permanent, a palace with the family crest on the gate, passed down through generations without question. But Harry and Meghan's relationship with home in Britain has always been provisional. Borrowed. Conditional on their standing with the family and their standing with the public. So when news broke in August 2026 that the couple was preparing to relocate back to the United Kingdom, it wasn't just gossip column fodder. It reopened one of the most emotionally loaded questions in modern royal history: do Harry and Meghan actually have a place in Britain anymore, literally and figuratively? Because here's the twist that's confusing everyone. They are not selling their Montecito mansion. That home, the one with the tennis court and the chicken coop Meghan has talked about in interviews, is staying in the family. This isn't a full defection back to British life. It looks, instead, like something more careful, more deliberate. A second base. A toehold back in the country Harry once called home, without fully giving up the sanctuary they built in California. And that raises the real mystery at the heart of this video. If it's not Frogmore Cottage, and it's not a palace apartment, and it's not some flashy central London townhouse under paparazzi siege, then where, exactly, are they going? To answer that, we need to go back. Because this story didn't start this month. It started years ago, with a cottage, a queen, and a decision that changed the Sussexes' relationship with Britain forever. Let's rewind to 2018. Harry and Meghan had just married in a fairytale ceremony at St. George's Chapel, Windsor, watched by millions around the world. In the early days of their marriage, they lived at Nottingham Cottage, a modest two-bedroom home tucked into the grounds of Kensington Palace. The same grounds shared with Prince William and Catherine. But as the couple prepared to welcome their first child, palace officials announced they'd be relocating. Not far, just outside London, to Windsor. Their new home was Frogmore Cottage, a grand 10-bedroom property on the Windsor estate, gifted to them as effectively a wedding present from the late Queen Elizabeth II. It came with a nursery, room for a gym, and space to build a life away from the constant proximity to William and Kate. A distancing that, even then, hinted at simmering tension between the two brothers. Frogmore should have been the beginning of a long, settled royal chapter. Instead, it became something else entirely, a symbol of a relationship that was unraveling in real time. By January 2020, Harry and Meghan stunned the world by announcing they were stepping back from royal duties altogether. They initially split their time between the UK and Canada, before settling permanently in Montecito, California, where they remain to this day, raising their two children, Archie and Lilibet. And then came the moment that many royal historians point to as the true turning point, the point of no return. In January 2023, Harry released his explosive memoir, Spare. In it, he leveled blistering accusations at his family. Allegations about his brother, his father, and the culture of the institution he'd grown up inside. It was raw, it was personal, and it was very public. Within days, Buckingham Palace confirmed that Harry and Meghan had vacated Frogmore Cottage. Officials didn't go into detail about the arrangements, but it later emerged the couple had already repaid over £2 million to cover the property's renovation costs. The cottage, once a symbol of new beginnings, became instead a symbol of the family's final, quiet severing. From that point on, Harry and Meghan had no residence in the United Kingdom. None. For a prince who had lived in Britain for most of his life, that was almost unthinkable. And it wasn't just about property. It was about safety, too. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, they also lost their government-funded police protection while in the UK. Harry fought this decision through the British courts for years, arguing that his family faced serious, well-documented security threats, and that he should, at minimum, be allowed to personally pay for police protection when visiting. He lost that legal battle in 2023 but continued pushing, telling the courts that without adequate protection, he felt he couldn't safely bring his children to what should have been their homeland. This is the emotional core of the entire home mystery. It was never simply about bricks and mortar. It was about whether Britain was a place Harry's own children could grow up visiting safely, and whether the government, and by extension the family, would make that possible. So by 2024 and 2025, the picture looked bleak for any kind of British homecoming. Harry made occasional solo visits, for charity events, for court appearances in his ongoing legal battles with the British press, even once turning down an offer to stay at Buckingham Palace during a trip. But Meghan, notably, had only returned to the UK once in years, for the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II in September 2022. There seemed to be no path back. Until, suddenly, in 2026, there was. So what actually changed? To understand the sudden shift, we need to look at three threads that all converged this year, almost like separate rivers quietly feeding into the same larger current. Thread 1, the security breakthrough. For years, Harry's fight over police protection felt like a dead end. But reports emerging in 2026 suggest that the body responsible for deciding on protection for royalty and public figures may be close to restoring some form of government-funded security for Harry. If that happens, it would remove one of the biggest practical obstacles standing between Harry's family and a safe return to Britain. No more 30-day advance notices to Scotland Yard just to set foot in the country he was born in. This matters enormously, because Harry has said publicly, and through his lawyers, that inadequate security was the single biggest reason he hadn't brought his children to the UK more often. If that barrier is genuinely lifting, it changes the entire calculation. Thread 2, the courtroom chapter closing. At the same time, Harry has been engaged in a lengthy, high-profile legal battle against the Daily Mail publisher over alleged unlawful information gathering. A case that stretched into a 6-week High Court trial. For years, Harry's relationship with the British press has been framed as one of the central reasons he and Meghan left in the first place. As that legal chapter, here's where the story gets personal. In July 2026, Harry made a trip to the UK primarily centred around preparations for the Invictus Games, the international sporting event he founded for wounded and injured servicemen and women. But it wasn't a solo trip. Toward the end of it, Meghan and the children flew out to join him. And during that visit, the family did something quietly significant. They visited Althorp House, the ancestral home of Harry's mother, Princess Diana, now owned by her brother, Charles, Earl Spencer. It's the estate where Diana grew up, and where she is buried on an island within the grounds. Harry and Meghan reportedly brought Archie and Lilibet to pay their respects, managing to do so privately, without being photographed by paparazzi. When Harry was later asked why the family was considering a return to the UK, sources close to the couple pointed to exactly that trip. How much they'd simply enjoyed being there together, as a family, away from cameras. It's a small detail, but it tells you everything about what's driving this decision. This isn't, by most accounts, a calculated public relations move or a reconciliation tour with the royal family. It looks more like a family quietly discovering that a country they'd exiled themselves from might still, in some way, feel like home. Especially for two young children who have Windsor Castle, Althorp, and English soil somewhere in their bloodline, even if they've barely experienced it. By mid-August 2026, the pieces came together publicly. Multiple outlets reported that Harry and Meghan were preparing to relocate back to the UK, not permanently abandoning California, but establishing a new life on British soil. And immediately, the speculation machine kicked into gear. Because officials confirmed one crucial detail early. This would not be a return to royal residencies. No Kensington Palace apartment. No Windsor Cottage. Instead, the couple is expected to settle into a private home, away from London, well outside the reach of Buckingham Palace's gates and, just as importantly, away from the paparazzi hotspots of central London. So where does that leave us? Two locations keep surfacing again and again in royal reporting. The first is Northamptonshire. Specifically, the area around the Althorp estate, the same estate the family visited so meaningfully in July. Given Harry's deep, lifelong connection to his mother's side of the family, the second possibility being floated is the Cotswolds, the postcard-perfect stretch of English countryside that has become something of a celebrity hideaway in recent years, known for its honey-coloured stone villages, sprawling private estates, and a level of privacy the capital simply can't offer. It's already home to a number of high-profile figures seeking exactly the kind of low-key rural anonymity Harry and Meghan appear to want. There's also a more personal detail worth mentioning here. According to some entertainment industry sources, the couple may have had help securing whatever property they land on, with reports suggesting friends including Ellen DeGeneres and her wife Portia de Rossi, who themselves relocated from the US to the English countryside a few years ago, played a role in helping guide Harry and Meghan through the unfamiliar terrain of British property buying. It's a small but telling detail. A reminder that despite living in Britain for most of his life, Harry has apparently never really had to navigate the property market himself. Those decisions, sources suggest, were always made for him, as a working royal with residences provided. What we don't have, at least not yet, is a confirmed address, a signed deed, or an official statement from Harry and Meghan's spokesperson naming the exact property. This is still, very much, a mystery being pieced together from clues. A meaningful family visit to Althorp, security law changes creating new possibilities, and a pattern of reporting pointing toward the countryside rather than the capital. As you can imagine, news of a potential Sussex homecoming didn't stay quiet for long. Within hours of the first reports, it dominated British front pages and flooded social media, with reactions splitting almost exactly the way you'd expect for a couple as polarizing as Harry and Meghan. For some in Britain, this is being framed as a hopeful sign, a chance for genuine reconciliation. Optimists point to Harry's ongoing efforts around the Invictus Games, his continued charitable work, and the emotional weight of that quiet Althorp visit as evidence this is a family trying, in their own way, to reconnect with the country and the roots they left behind. For grandparents on both sides, including King Charles, whose own health has been a subject of public concern. A UK-based branch of the family, even an unofficial one, means more chances to actually see his grandchildren grow up. For others, particularly parts of the British tabloid press that Harry has spent years fighting in court, the skepticism is immediate and sharp. Commentary has ranged from questioning the timing, arriving conveniently alongside major legal proceedings and security negotiations, to outright doubt that any half-in, half-out arrangement can really work, echoing the same criticism the royal family itself made back in 2020 when the Sussexes first proposed splitting their time between countries. There's also a noticeably different tone depending on which side of the Atlantic you're reading from. American entertainment outlets have leaned into the human, almost soap opera angle, the mystery house hunt, the celebrity friends pitching in, the question of whether Meghan's California-built brand, from her Netflix projects to her lifestyle ventures, can really coexist with a quieter English countryside life. British royal correspondents, meanwhile, have focused far more heavily on the institutional questions, security funding, taxpayer cost, and what any UK presence means for the already. There's also the security dimension, which experts say cannot be overstated. Britain's royal protection arrangements are notoriously secretive and complex, decided by a specific committee that weighs individual threat assessments rather than simply granting protection based on title. Harry's years-long legal fight over this issue reflects just how seriously this barrier has been treated, and how significant it would be if government protection is genuinely being restored. Without it, security analysts note, a full-time or even substantial part-time UK presence for young children would simply be very difficult to justify from a safety standpoint, regardless of how much the family might want it. And then there's the family dynamic itself. Royal historians often point out that King Charles's relationship with time is different from most people's. As monarch, and a man who has spoken publicly about his own health journey, every additional visit from his grandchildren carries extra weight. Some commentators believe a UK base for Harry's family, even a private, unofficial one, could create far more natural opportunities for Charles to build a relationship with Archie and Lilibet than sporadic transatlantic visits ever could. At the same time, experts are quick to caution against reading this as any kind of full royal reunion. Palace watchers note that the institution has been consistent for years. There is no version of Harry and Meghan resuming official royal duties, no half-in, half-out arrangement being revived. What's being discussed here is something much more modest and human, not a comeback to the family firm, but simply a family finding a way to be geographically closer to relatives, roots, and a country that, whatever the history, still shaped who Harry is. So where does that leave us right now, in late August 2026? As of this recording, no official address has been confirmed. What we do know, pieced together from multiple credible reports, looks like this: Harry and Meghan are moving forward with plans to establish a home in the UK, most likely somewhere outside London, with Northamptonshire, near the Spencer family's Althorp estate, and the Cotswolds emerging as the two leading possibilities. Their Montecito home in California is staying in the family, meaning this looks far more like the establishment of a second base than a full-scale relocation. Behind the scenes, the security question remains one of the biggest pieces still to fall into place. Whether government-funded police protection is genuinely restored will likely shape not just where they live, but how visible, and how permanent, this UK presence ultimately becomes. There's also the matter of Harry's ongoing legal proceedings, which continue to work their way through the British courts and remain a backdrop to everything else happening this year. Many royal watchers see the resolution of that chapter as almost a prerequisite for any deeper sense of closure with the country and its press. What hasn't changed, at least publicly, is the status of Harry's relationship with his brother, Prince William. There's no indication, from any credible source, that a house move alone is going to repair years of well-documented tension between the two. If anything, some commentators suggest a UK homecoming could reignite scrutiny of that relationship, simply because proximity tends to make estrangement more visible, not less. For now, the honest answer to the question in our title is this: nobody outside Harry and Meghan's inner circle knows exactly which front door they'll be walking through. But for the first time in years, the pieces, the security shifts, the meaningful family visit to Althorp, the practical decision to keep their American home, are all pointing in the same direction, toward a real, if carefully managed, return. When you step back and look at this whole story, it's easy to get lost in the property gossip, the guessing games about postcodes and estate agents and which celebrity friend helped broker which deal. But underneath all of that noise is a much simpler, much more human story. This is a family who left Britain under some of the most painful, public circumstances imaginable: accusations, heartbreak, a genuine fear for their safety, and a sense that there was simply no room left for them inside the institution they'd once belonged to. And now, years later, quietly, almost tentatively, they appear to be finding their way back. Not to the palace. Not to the spotlight. But to the country itself. To the countryside where Harry's mother grew up, to the grandfather his children barely know, to a version of home that has nothing to do with titles or royal duty, and everything to do with roots. Whether that home ends up being a quiet manor near Althorp, a converted farmhouse in the Cotswolds, or somewhere nobody has guessed yet, one thing seems certain: for Harry and Meghan, this next chapter isn't about reclaiming a royal life they walked away from. It's about building something new, on old, familiar ground. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mystery of Harry and Meghan's return to the UK, make sure to hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel keep bringing you thoroughly researched royal stories like this one. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the moment an actual address, or an official statement, breaks, we'll be covering it in full detail. And I want to hear from you. Do you think Harry and Meghan settling back in the UK could be the first real step toward healing the rift with the rest of the royal family, or is this simply a practical, private decision that has nothing to do with reconciliation at all? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.